All right, so welcome everybody to this talk, and today it's a very special day because we're gonna discuss a topic that I think very many people have many difficulties with and find quite scary, frankly, which is international commerce terms, so Incoterms for short. And we're going to go over exactly what that is, which ones are more relevant for e-commerce sellers. But before we do that, I want to invite a very special guest who is really the most qualified person that I can imagine to talk with me about this. And that is Bill Tackaberry. And Bill Tackaberry, he has over 20 years of experience, as I understand it, in international trade and commerce. And specifically, I think you mentioned that you have 15 years of experience trading with China, so between China and North America and Europe. And that's really amazing because, of course, as an e-commerce seller, many of the products that we will be manufacturing would be made in China. So today, Bill, he's the CFO at Morpho Manufacturing. And we will talk more in depth about what exactly Morpho Manufacturing does. But just for now, let me say very briefly that Morpho Manufacturing, they help companies get their ideas all the way to mass manufacturing. And you do this, as I understand it, by leveraging the awesome network that you have built out, both inside of China and now perhaps expanding a little bit to countries other than China as well. So yeah, it's a really great pleasure to have you with me, Bill. And just to start off, let me ask you, how did you get into international trade, and how did you, what paths led up to you becoming the CFO of Morpho Manufacturing?
Well, I started out at university in logistics. It was mostly Canadian and American freight that we were handling. So that was like the trucking industry. For a large part of it was freight brokering and freight consolidation. So that's where I sort of learned a lot about logistics. And then in early 2000, I started to expand into my own operation, which is related to sourcing goods out of China. So essentially acting as a trading intermediary for specific clients I had in Canada. I kind of started coming to China around 2005. To expand my own network as far as suppliers went, and found that being over here on the ground was instrumental in making those relationships with those suppliers on behalf of my clients, and kind of fell in love with China along the way. In 2011, I moved over here because it was actually easier to live in China and run my business than it was to live in Canada and run it. Now, I traveled back and forth quite a bit at that time as well. Around 2017, I believe in January 2017, I was offered an opportunity with Morpho from the CEO here, Josh, to join board with him, become a partner, and start becoming the acting CFO. And with my experience that I brought to the team, along with his incredible amount of knowledge and experience in sourcing in China, it was a good fit. So that's led up to where I am now, where even though I'm the CFO, I'm obviously have a great deal of insight into the logistics for our clients. So I do head the logistics team as well, and try and teach my staff a lot of the ins and outs of international shipping, as well as educating our clients about these things. And I would think that a lot of the questions you're about to ask me are the same kind of questions I get every day from clients that are new to us.
Yeah. When researching a little bit more for manufacturing and yourself, what you are doing, it certainly seems that you will be able to answer all of these questions with ease. So just to give a bit of context to everything that we will be talking about, it's basically from the perspective of an e-commerce seller. So if we can imagine somebody that's starting out, maybe they have sold some things on Amazon, but it's a small to medium-sized company. And many things will be first time for them. So that is why I think it will be good to go through the Incoterms and do it at a quite, I guess, basic level. So yeah, just to start off, could you very briefly describe what are international commerce terms, Incoterms, and why do we need them? Yeah.
Sure. So the history of Incoterms is kind of a strange one because it kind of wasn't formulated into what we call Incoterms 2000, was the common reference for the last 20 years. Prior to 2000, when Incoterms was introduced, we did use the terminology within the freight business quite a bit. So there's a lot of carryover from terminology that, especially in the West, that we were using that now is rolled into Incoterms. Incoterms became a three-letter designation system where the description of the Incoterm could be used in primarily three purposes. The first one being that the relationship between the seller and the buyer, the Incoterm dictates ownership and liability. So that was the first use of it. The second one is that relates to when you're getting a cost. When someone quotes you, especially internationally, a cost for your unit price, the Incoterms will be dictated in the costing. So you want to think of cost in two ways, generally, especially in e-commerce. You would think about your raw cost, which is the cost that it creates to make that unit without packaging or anything like that. But you'd also want to consider what your landed cost is. Your landed cost is all in, everything related to getting that product manufactured, packaged, through the inland charges within the country of origin to the port or to the airport, onto a ship or a plane, transferred then over into the receiving country, through the import process, any tariffs and taxes and duties that need to be applied, and then that outland freight move from the port to the final customer's door, and that's what we call landed cost. What does it cost you per unit to do that entire process? And that's how your client should think about this, is what is the raw cost, what's my landed cost? Because the landed cost can go up quite significantly, and there's a lot of different factors at play. So that's the second purpose of Incoterms, is that I want to know when I'm being quoted. Is that quote FOB? Is it X-Works? Is it CFR? I want to know what that Incoterm is, because then I know what is included in that unit price from that supplier. And I don't have to then allocate that the additional cost to my landed cost, because I know if it's FOB, that everything to the foreign port of export is being covered by the person quoting me that price. Right? The third relationship of Incoterms is simply when you're dealing with a shipping company. Because a shipping company, if you're trying to handle certain aspects of the shipping yourself, then you would be going to them and saying, I would like a quote for this shipping move. And this is the Incoterms that I'm asking for the quote. And the most common that e-commerce buyers are going to go and ask about this, they're going to want to get a quote that's either DDU or DDP, or as DDP is now commonly referred to as DAP, but we still in the industry say DDP. And that they could actually approach a shipping company and say, hey, I've got this freight, it's in this location, and I need it to be delivered to this place, and I want you to quote me DDP. Meaning they'll handle everything. And right. I can get into what those terms, I know I just tossed a bunch of terms at you. I can go into more detail in a moment about what those specifically mean. But that's generally what we use Incoterms for. The last purpose of Incoterms was to make it universal as far as the three-letter terminology goes. So if I say to a Chinese person, FOB, they know what that means. If the guy at the port handling the freight looks at the bill of lading and sees FOB, LA, blah, 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 he understands what that means. So the language barriers are eliminated with Incoterms and global shipping today. That was a great thing for them to introduce.
Awesome. So basically when you get an invoice from any company, manufacturing company in China, depending on that three-letter designation, it's really could be a world of difference in terms of price, because it could include the shipping, the insurance, and all of those things, or it could not include those. So it's very important to understand these terms. And I think people can just go on Wikipedia and read exactly what each term mean. But I think for now, if we just talk about the ones that are most commonly used for e-commerce sellers, that would be a great start. Yeah.
Sure. So I want to quickly describe kind of, again, the process involved here and why they do this. Your product originates at a source and it's going to a destination. And it goes through a couple of almost like mile markers along the way. And we divide them into, you're at origin, there's an inland move, which is from the factory to the port. Then there is the after port move to the foreign port, which is the bulk of the journey if it's on a ship. Then after it clears through, it has to be exported via the port, and then it has to be imported via the foreign port, clears through, and then it has to finally be delivered from the port to the destination. And that's the entire process. And then the question, of course, in terms is who's responsible for what, and what does it mean for ownership, right? And a lot of people think that when a shipping company is transporting the goods, that somehow that shipping company technically owns the good and is liable for them. It's not true, right? So The most common that you're going to find in China right now is what we call EXW or X Works. This is the simplest because it's only step one. The factory is telling you this is your cost to our factory door. In other words, you have to handle everything from their location onwards. They have nothing to do with it. They're selling you the goods. It's up to you to make those arrangements. The second most common one would be what we call FOB or free on board. Free on board is an excellent way to get product quoted when you're sourcing because it eliminates the hassle of having to deal with the inland freight move and the export of the goods out of the country. So, for example, you're buying from a factory in China, you're from North America, you have no idea how you would go about getting that product exported out of China. It's not easy, right? So, yes, freight companies can do it for you. Freight brokers can do it for you, but in all honesty, why not let the factory do it for you? They're quite good at doing it. So we would get FOB quoted, and what we would see is that our cost might go up 3 or 4% per unit because of the FOB aspect. Now, the next most common one would be CFR. CFR is a cost in freight, and it means that the factory is going to handle the shipment from their door to the foreign port of unloading and then nothing else beyond, and does not include the import tariffs or the clearance of the goods. They're just getting it to the port. You must take over that point. A lot of larger companies like this because it allows them to use their own in-house customs clearance firm to handle everything beyond that. They probably have a very good relationship with them. You're now dealing usually with an American customs clearance house, and it's an American port, American government tariff remittance. So there's advantages to working with the clearance companies that are located in your own country. But if you're not dealing in large volume, CFR is usually not suitable. Beyond that, we would want to look at what we call DDU. And DDU means delivered destination unpaid. The unpaid part means we're not paying your tariffs. We're not paying for your clearance into your home country, but we'll pay for everything else. So that is attractive to a lot of foreign buyers because it means that everything else is taken care of, and all I have to do is hire a customs clearance house to clear the freight and remit any duties that are owed. Right? The easiest one is what we call DDP, and DDP is delivered destination paid. So in this one, you get your quote from either the supplier or from the shipping company. They give you one price, and that's what's going to cost all into the foreign country. And you're not the importer of record. They would end up being the importer of record, the shipping company themselves. Now, they do it on your behalf. They have to declare the goods properly. But they're the ones who are handling all this. You don't have to worry about any of it. And so a lot of customers who are smaller e-commerce businesses and stuff, they really like DDP because it just eliminates all the hassle for them.
Got it.
What's the disadvantage of DDP? As you can guess, it is the most expensive process because everybody makes money on all these services. And if I have to arrange your duty remittance on your goods, then I'm going to add 3% to that or whatever it's going to be. If I'm handling your insurance, your freight, everything is going to have a little bit tacked on, and that's what shipping companies do. They love to quote DDP because they can make a little bit of extra money. Now, 3% doesn't sound like a lot, but if you owe $25,000 in tariffs for importing specific goods, and they're adding 3% more of that, then suddenly it is increasing the price maybe to the point where it's significant. But I would recommend that the smaller you are, the more you would look into DDP because you're entering into an area you have not the expertise to properly negotiate the freight rates that you would want to try and achieve if you did it yourself. Save the world of
if I can summarize as I have understood it, now you have listed some different terms and you have gone basically from the one where you as the buyer take on the most responsibility, X works, X EXW, to the one where you take on the least. And of course there are other ones we have not talked about. Would it be a fair thing to say that as a small seller it would be a reasonable choice to start with the one that that gives you the least responsibility, so DDP? And then as you scale your your business, you move slowly towards the ones where you take on more and more responsibility to lower your cost? Or
there's an approach here that I would recommend for anyone who's doing this, and this is what I would do. I would get the supplier to quote me X Works or FOB, one of the two, as well as quote me DDP. At the same time, I would take the volume of freight that I want to move, and I would go and talk to a logistics company, and I would get them to quote the move for me. And then I would do the math, and I would see which one is most cost effective, because both routes will be very easy. Either I'm going to let the factory DDP it to me, and that's the most cost effective, or I'm going to buy it X Works or FOB, and I'm going to let a shipping company quote me the DDP move, and perhaps that actually is a lower price. Because if you don't compare that, you may end up paying a premium to a supplier or a DDP move. And the difference could be as wild as 20 to 30%. So if you want to get that cross-quoted like that, and then you can make a better decision as to which way you want to go as far as handling it.
Got it. Thank you very much for that advice. To keep things moving, let's maybe go through some of the other questions we prepared here. Sure. Now, this is not directly related to Incoterms, but how does a small seller usually navigate the third-party deliveries? So let's say that you go with the DDP terms, and then you get your shipment, and then there's a huge container that arrives with whatever product that you have ordered. What do you do from there? Like, how do you get it into your customers' hands?
Well, then you have to look at again, this is another distribution model that you should look at. Mm-hmm. You have the option to do drop shipping out of China. And there's actually logistics companies here, and there's even sometimes the suppliers themselves can help you with negotiating some kind of drop ship arrangement. Whereas then you can get like sometimes even a flat rate, where it's like $35 per shipment worldwide, and they blend it all together. Or they'll break it down by zones. So you do 4 zones to drop ship, with North America, Europe, Australia, and so on, right? So you could actually pull off doing that. However, I think that you have to sort of look at, well, where am I distributing to? If I'm distributing globally, then it doesn't make a lot of sense to move the goods all the way across the world to my location and then break it out globally. That might cost more money, and I'm having to pay often import tariffs to bring those goods into my country, and now I'm shipping them out again to foreign countries, and they're going to be taxed again. So you have to evaluate where those goods are going. Now, let's say I'm importing a container of goods, and the idea is they're going to be distributed within my own country. And America is a good example. Imported into the USA, everything's being sold within the USA, so therefore I want to look at that route. Well, it would make no sense to drop ship it out of China individually, where you consolidate everything into a container load move or a less than container load move, have it shipped to either a warehousing facility that can do the drop ship for you, or I'm moving it into my own location. But yes, absolutely. You could face a problem where if you're running a little home business and you've ordered a container of goods and you put your address as this is where I'm receiving it. Well, don't be surprised when a truck shows up with a 40-foot container and they're like, here it is, and the driver's not helping unload it.
Right.
You'll have to unload it yourself, right? So in this case, I think that you'll find that warehousing and cross-docking facilities is quite a really cost-effective solution. Warehousing space is at a very low premium, even in the US right now. And the cross-docking and the drop shipping that those outfits can do is often a great solution as to how to handle the goods without actually you having to handle the goods at some small location. And even if you have an office, you probably don't have an unloading bay, you don't have warehousing space. It might make more sense to find a warehouse that's maybe located near you, so you can go down there and see your goods and inspect them and so on, and work with that warehouse as far as how you want to do your end move for getting the goods out to your clients.
Got it. So drop shipping, I think, has gotten a little bit of a bad name just because many people see it as when you order from AliExpress and just charge a premium on that product. But there are ways to do it which are professional and where it just makes sense, like you say, to not move the goods around the world. If you're like, why would you send it to US, for example, if you're going to sell it in Europe in the end? So that's nice to hear. And if you're going to do it the way where you have a market, so let's say you're selling only in US, then find some local warehouse and do it that way, I would guess would be a good start. All right, awesome, thank you. And you already mentioned something very interesting as well, which is taxes and tariffs. And could you just like very, very briefly, if we're talking about somebody in North America, in United States, which taxes and tariffs would one need to think about when importing products from China?
Okay, so the primary taxes that we're concerned about will be the duty tax on the goods. And so we generally use an HS code. The HS code is, and if you have never seen the volume of HS codes, it is unbelievable how many there are. And it's mind-boggling trying to take your product and figure out which HS code it classifies as. And I do not suggest that anyone who is not in this field to try and figure out their own HS code. Generally, you want to talk to a customs broker that will look at your product. Then they will go and figure out what HS code can be applied that gives you the best advantage for paying the lowest tariff. And there's often going to be maybe a dozen HS codes that seem applicable. And we want to pick the one that has the lowest tariff. We don't want to pick one that has a 25% tariff if there's another one with a 3% tariff. So that's what customs brokers tend to do. And they do that in the interest, of course, for the client because they want to handle the shipment for the client and build that relationship for handling their import needs and maybe even their freight needs as well. So that's just the first step about tariffs, is figuring out what is the HS code that applies. Now, you can ask your supplier, what HS code is this product? If it's OEM, meaning it's a product that you're simply slapping your brand on, but it is a common product, OEM means original equipment manufacturing. An OEM product, often the suppliers, they know what the HS code is. They've been shipping this stuff for other clients. They can tell you what it is, and you can look up what are the tariffs involved. This is pretty easy to do on the internet to see what the actual tariff for all these countries related to these codes is. But you also have to be sure that it's going to be accepted by your country. Just because an HS code is working for America does not mean it works for Australia. That's up to the countries, the receiving countries, to make that final determination if it's acceptable or not. And this is why when freight gets cleared, you want a customs broker to be doing the clearing for you. They will know what will fly and what won't within the country. And just like how we use accountants to file our business taxes, because the government knows that CPAs actually understand what's allowed and what's not. The governments of the world understand that customs brokers also understand what's allowed and what's not. So, whatever they submit is way more likely not to get audited than if it's some guy trying to do it on his own. Right? So that's how you determine about the tariff. So the HS code dictates that. Then the next part is, what's the declared value? And there's a lot of different ways to approach that, but generally the declared value should be what you paid for it, direct cost. So if you paid $1 per unit to some supplier in China, and they're now shipping it out to you, there will be a commercial invoice that has to go along with that shipment. And on the commercial invoice, it will describe the product, how many units are involved, dimensions, and so on. It will have the HS code. And then finally, it will have your declared value, which should be the cost that you pay for the goods. Now, not everybody does this. A lot of people like to save money on taxes by declaring the goods lower than what they actually paid for it. And there's different, it's like a legal thing where it's like, well, I'm going to declare the material costs. I'm not going to declare the labor costs. Right. It didn't really go into the product. There's ways you can finesse this. Lawyers are very good at coming up with these things. But the end result is that receiving customs, and let's say for USA, which is the Customs Border Patrol, along with the IRS, if they audit you and decide that they don't agree with what you're saying, you're not going to court with them. You're paying what they decide. Okay? And they have in America, they're allowed to go back 5 years. So you can get away with this for 5 years, declaring a lower value, thinking you're being very smart, saving on the taxes, and then they turn around and they audit you. They go back and they audit everything. And the way they're going to match it up is they're going to look and say to you, show us the payment you made that matched PCI to that factory. And if that payment doesn't match the commercial invoice, meaning you paid them more, then you're going to get nailed, and they're going to now charge you the tariffs on what you had remitted to the factory rather than what you declared on your commercial invoice, as well as they might fine you or take away your ability to import goods going forward. So that's the danger in playing that game where I'm going to declare a lower value. So really, what tariff do you pay? HS code versus that percent on the declared value. You declare $20,000 and the tariff's 3%. You can do the math. Now you know what you're going to pay for tariff. There'll be some other smaller duties, but they're nothing like what that general tariff ends up being. You have to pay for bills of lading. You have to pay for little things. But those are all small things compared to the actual percentage remittance that you have to make on the goods you use in the country.
Right, got it. So, I mean, in very short, hire a customs broker to do it for you, and they will probably also be able to advise you on what the declared value you should put, right?
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
Perfect.
And even our own clients, we'll handle logistics for them. We'll do DDP for them, no problem. But if they come and say, look, we want to do CFR, and but also, can you handle the clearance for us? Our answer is no. We do not offer that service, but we're more than happy to try and find you a customs broker in your area that's from one of the larger outfits who would be happy to take your business and do this for you. I have a big belief that you should work with customs clearance brokers who exist in the country you're trying to import. They're the experts. They know their country. They know the laws. They can give you the best price possible.
That makes a lot of sense. And thank you. So I think people will find this extremely useful. And just to wrap up, could you tell more about Morpho Manufacturing and what you do? Because I think that's also going to be extremely useful for my audience here.
Sure. So we're essentially what you would call a contract manufacturer. We specialize in what's known as, like I mentioned, OEM earlier, but we specialize primarily in ODM, which is original design manufacturing. 90% of our clients, their products are original ideas that were taken from often a napkin sketch and then turned into a manufactured product, packaging, etc., to sell to their customer base. So original design manufacturing is a lot more complicated than OEM. OEM is simply saying, hey, I like this pen, I want to stick my brand on it, and I'm going to sell it, right? ODM is like, I've got an idea for a brand new product that doesn't exist on the market, or maybe it does exist, but we're doing it in a different way. And so it's going to require a lot more work. And the process of contract manufacturing goes through, typically the steps are the idea has to then go into design phase, which then after design phase would go through an iteration into CAD files and design files and so on, into a development phase. The development phase is typically where you're now talking to a supplier with engineers and you're trying to determine that this designed idea, how then do we manufacture it in the most efficient way possible? How do we turn this into something that can be actually turned into a conceivable product? So that is a process called DFM, which is designed for manufacturability. Once we have everything set up to DFM, we now know the roadmap forward. We know what the costs are going to be. Is there going to be tooling that's required? Is there going to be molds that are required? Is there going to be specific assembly that's required? What are those issues looking like? This then leads into what certifications and testing needs to go along with this. There's liability testing, and then there's mandated testing. So, for example, anything that's electronics that's going into Europe, I believe that UL is what they would say in Europe. I know in Canada, it's CRA. Has a lot to do with that. I know in America, the designation is what is it again? CL in Canada. It's I can't remember.
You're talking about FCC or?
I'm talking about electronics need a specific rating in America.
I know, but the FCC mark or
FCC, exactly.
Right, yeah.
FCC mark, right? So it has to go through an FCC testing in order to be imported into the country with food products or anything related to the use of food. So if I'm selling a plastic container meant to have food stored in it, it's going to have to go through FDA testing to make sure that the plastic is toxic and so on, right? So that is another process that we have to also help our clients look into. It's the inspection process, which can all be done out of China, and all the certificates can be issued here, but they have a cost, of course, associated with them. Once that's done, we can tune up the manufacturing, actually manufacture a product. We also explore assembly. What does the cost of assembly look like? How much assembly is going to be done by the supplier or done by the end consumer? I'm sure you've bought many things that come unassembled and you have to put some things together, but other parts are assembled. There's that. Then it goes to packaging, where we have to look at, well, how's the packaging going to fit together? How is it going to be shipped as consumer packaging? What about inner pack? Because if it's a small item, you might be, for distribution purposes, set to 12 to an inner pack. Beyond that is master cartons. Beyond that is, what do we do to protect those cartons to make sure that nothing is damaged when it's being shipped overseas in the container systems? And that is, and even is labeling, what kind of labels need to be applied. Anyone who's sold into Amazon warehouses knows they're very specific as to how the boxes have to be packaged, how it has to be labeled, the size of the pallets it must reside on, and so on, right? We do every single aspect of that. And beyond that, logistics, we handle that for our clients as well, so that for a lot of ways, a client can come to us with an idea, and almost every single aspect other than marketing and sales of that product, we can help them with.
That's amazing. You have a very integrated approach where you basically take care of everything and use your very specialized knowledge to think many steps ahead. Like you said about certification, for example, when you hit the design for manufacturing stage. We
like to clear the fog related to all the things that, look, people out there, they got good product ideas and they know how to sell. And I support that 100%. I'm happy that there's entrepreneurs out there who can do that. But we've spent years and years learning the manufacturing game. And this is not something that you can easily learn. And if you're not in the country where the manufacturing is happening, and I mean 24/7, living near the factory, visiting it constantly, doing the quality control yourself, don't ever trust a factory to do their own QC. You need to hire an outside firm to do it. If you're not able to do that, why would you bother? You could be putting that energy into selling product and allowing people who are experts at creating the product as far as the manufacturing goes to handle that aspect for you.
For sure. I have talked several times with my audience exactly about this, that there are many things that you should not even attempt to do yourself just because of the amount of either know-how that you need or that you just need boots on the ground in China, for example, like you said, to control a factory. Beautiful. Really, thank you very much for going through these questions. And again, I think this is very helpful. And there's a lot more research people can do, of course, to go through all of the different Incoterm codes and see the specifics around those. But I think this is a perfect introduction to get people going and give them a little bit of a footing. And with that, yeah.
I just want to say to you, if anybody that's interested about our services, they can visit our website, morphomfg.com. Find us easily on the internet, and feel free to reach out and contact us if you want further advice.
Exactly, morphomfg.com, and I will put a link to that as well in the description of this video. And is there anything else that we have forgotten to talk about that you would like to mention before we wrap it up?
The only last thing I'd like to talk about related to logistics is about insurance. And it's very important that when you're shipping goods to consider that for the cost of insurance, it might be a good idea to always insure your freight. Last little quick story I want to give you. I had a client 2 years ago, makes watches, imports them into Europe. He bought $36,000 worth of watches from us. He used his own logistics company, which is DHL, to arrange the freight move. And the truck, when it was out for final delivery in Europe, the truck got stolen and his watches were on board. $36,000 worth of watches were stolen. He didn't have any insurance on the goods, and DHL reimbursed him $100. So insurance, for the little bit of extra cost it is related to shipping, it protects against damages and theft. I highly advise people to consider to do that when you're buying goods because it's never included by default.
Thank you for mentioning that. Definitely a good and a very scary story to motivate people to get insurance. All right, so thank you very much again, and
thanks a lot, Tony.
Yeah, thank you. Have a great day.
Yeah.
Bye. Hi all, Tony here. I just wanted to say that if you enjoyed this talk here with Bill Tackaberry, and if you want to learn more about physical product development, then I really recommend that you check out my course. The course is for people who are interested in taking their physical product to market, but don't know exactly all of these steps. And in that course, I will go through a ton of different subjects, and we will learn about patents, we will learn about design for manufacturing, about how to come up with good product ideas, about how to validate those product ideas before investing a ton of money. Basically, just everything an e-commerce entrepreneur or an inventor needs to know to get their product idea to market. So if you're interested, please check out the link in the description, and I hope to see you in that course. Thank you. Bye.